Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Massachusetts. I am so delighted to welcome back our friend. It's one of my favorite guests. She's here to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Your One and Only Heart. Please welcome back to the show, Rajani LaRocca. How are you?
I'm great, Jed. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. It's so great to have you back on. And for this episode, I should probably refer to you as your official title. It's Dr. Rajani.
Yes. I am a doctor. I'm an internal medicine doctor at Mass General Hospital.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Mass General, that ain't shabby. That's a pretty good place.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to work there.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's certainly one of, if not the most respected hospital here in Massachusetts or New England, certainly up there in the top two. And it's fantastic. Your One and Only Heart. What a great, important title for a picture book. Tell us all about it, please.
So, Your One and Only Heart is a poetic celebration of the human heart, and its contrasting characteristics. For example, it is singular and a team player. It is electric and muscular. And it is just absolutely beautifully illustrated by debut illustrator Lauren Page Conrad. And, she works in cut paper collage. So, I'm absolutely delighted that this book is going to be out in the world. This book is really, important to me. As a doctor, when I was in medical school, I really found the heart to be one of the most interesting and fascinating organs that we have. This book took a long time to write and to get, into the right kind of format. And so I'm just so happy that years and years and years of working on this book, have paid off in this way.
I'm curious. You said that it took a long time for this book to become a reality. It's such an important thing to you. I mean, you might think, oh, she just went down and didn't stop writing this, and why did it take so long? What was it about this particular subject that made it so difficult for it to come to life?
So, the original idea, for this book was, thinking about the hardest working muscle in your body, which is the heart. And that was the original title that I came up with, and I was just kind of brainstorming it. And I first started writing this in 2013, so 10 years ago. And, I couldn't figure out, like, I knew lots of things about the heart, but I couldn't figure out how to convey them in a way that was both informative and fun, because that's what you have to do when you're writing nonfiction. I mean, for anybody, but especially for children, you need to make it fun. And, I worked on it, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I'd already written a picture book about DNA called The Secret Code Inside You, and that was in rhyming poetry. And, this book never started out as a rhyming poetry book, but then I tried it and it wasn't right because I just kept having to change words and squeeze them in a way that felt awkward. So that wasn't right. And it wasn't until 5 years later, 2018, because, I'll just give you a caveat. I had many projects going on at one time. I was writing a novel. I had other picture book ideas. And so this was just one of many projects that I was working on. And I couldn't really figure out how to approach this until suddenly in 2018, I don't know why, I thought, wait a minute. The way to organize this is that there are characteristics of the heart that seem to be opposite to each other, but they're all true about the heart. And I said, that's it. And then, when that clicked into place, I made this list of kind of opposite characteristics that I wanted to talk about. And then I was like, oh, this needs to be written in poetry. Clearly. It can't just be prose, because to me, the workings of the human body, are poetic. And so it made sense to write this in poetry. And then it just all came together. And, I had a lot of backmatter that is in, prose, that I had put in, with each page. And in the final book, once I worked with my editor, we put all the backmatter at the back. So the poetry just kind of shines on its own.
That's wonderful. And I first off, I love that you're like, oh, I had a lot of projects. I had this novel going on. I had this writing novel. And you forgot about the fact that you're a mom, you're a wife, and you're a doctor. And, so someone can give you a pass for being a little bit busy.
Well, maybe. I also think that sometimes it's good for projects to take a long time. Sometimes it takes a while for your subconscious to figure out what you're trying to actually do, and that's okay. So I think this is a reminder to me that when things take some time, that it's okay, and it might actually be for the best. Because while your brain is thinking about all these other things, being a doctor, taking care of your kids, hanging out with your family, working on other projects, that there's a part of your brain that's thinking about this project. And, ultimately it will reveal itself, like what it should actually be doing.
Yeah. It's interesting that the whole idea of opposites, that kind of yin and yang, I don't know if that's appropriate, but, of the heart was something that spurred you on. I'm guessing that's something that kids really kind of enjoy talking about. Well, it's this, but it's also that, and it's this here and there. So what are some of the kind of dualities of the heart that we celebrate in this book?
So, as I mentioned, the heart is singular. You only have one of them, but it's also cooperative. It's part of an entire system, the cardiovascular system. And, it is simple, right? It's a pump, but it's also complex because the way it's set up is ingenious and, just fascinating. And, it is energetic and relaxed. So, that one I thought was so much fun because your heart is like squeezing, right? But the thing we don't think about is the time in between the beats when the heart relaxes. And that's just as important as the time when it squeezes. And it's electric and muscular and so on and so forth. It's so fascinating to me. And it is, it's a wonderful thing to think about because we all have hearts. They're absolutely essential. It's the reason why it's called vital signs, right? Mm-hmm. It's the most vital organ except for the one in your head. And, I love the way it is constructed, in this perfect way. There are two sides of the heart that pump to completely different parts of the body, but they both need to be working in concert with each other in order for everything to work. So I just, I absolutely love it. It's absolutely fascinating. And boiling down kind of complicated scientific concepts, into poetry, but also into poetry that will appeal to kids is something that was a really fun challenge.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's going to sound stupid. I'm sorry. But I'm guessing that there are parents who are going to be asked this question when they're reading this book with their kids.
Yeah.
Why do we feel sad in our heart? When our hearts are broken, we use this muscle as the symbol for love, and when our hearts are broken, we feel it there. I know because I felt it there. I know it's here up in my head that everything's going on, but man, I feel it in my heart, and I don't understand why.
That's such a great question. It's not a stupid question. It's a great question. It's because I think our hearts are exquisitely sensitive to our emotions. And so when we feel excited or sad or whatever, our heart changes, like the speed at which it beats, how strongly it beats, all of those things change in response to our emotions. So I think that's why we feel that emotion comes from our heart. Sure, it really does feel like it. It's really, we don't feel our brain thinking. So it's hard to assign us, it's hard to assign emotion to the brain, even though that's clearly where it comes from. But yeah, that's actually something that I talk about a little bit in the book, which is that your heart changes how it beats depending on how you feel or what you plan on doing. Like before you start exercising, your heart starts to speed up. It's like, gotta get ready to get, blood to those muscles. So, I think it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I mean, I feel it too. I'm always going like this. Yeah. I'm always touching my chest saying, yes, I feel that strongly.
Well, that makes perfect sense because I know when I'm speaking to young aspiring magicians and they talk about, how can you go on stage? You seem so confident. Every time I'm going to go on, I feel like my heart is going to explode. And, you don't feel that at all. And I'm like, no, dude, I feel it just as you. But I've come to realize that feeling in my heart when it gets excited and it starts pumping really fast and my blood pressure is up, that's the same feeling I feel when I'm excited. So I've just convinced myself when I'm nervous that I'm just excited, and that's like, oh, this is going to be fun. And it's amazing when kids are, these young aspiring performers are able to make that, kind of change in their brain, how much more confidence they have running out on stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really neat. So learning about the heart, it's fun and it's interesting, but I have a feeling that there's an even deeper reason for you wanting kids to know about their heart. Is it possible that if our kids understand how our heart works and how important it is, that they'll care for it longer or better as they grow?
Oh, I mean, I hope so. I think that one of the things I hope kids understand from this book is that all these characteristics are true about the heart, but they're also true about you, kids, as individuals, right? There are all these kind of contrasting characteristics that we have that seem to not go together, but they do go together. And if you read this book and care about the heart, I hope that means that you care about yourself, all aspects of yourself, kind of mental aspects of yourself and also your physical aspects, and that you take care of yourself because you've only got one, right? You've only got one heart. You've only got one you. So you should do all the things, you should celebrate yourself, and you should do all the things you can to keep healthy, and happy.
Speaking of happy is an emotion, and one of the things that you and I talked about, and it was absolutely one of my most loved interviews with you, talking about your writing style, and I think the question was, how do you start when you're putting together a novel or a picture book? And you said that when you're starting a writing project, you start with an emotion. And I'm just curious, what emotion did you start with when you wrote Your One and Only Heart?
So I think there are two emotions that I started with. One is joy, because isn't it amazing that we have this little organ in our body that is essential to our being alive, that we don't even have to think about. It just does its job every minute, right? But the other emotion is, I guess if it's an emotion, it's curiosity. It's like, oh, but how does it work? Like what, like really? It has like different kind of aspects to it that I don't really understand. So it's those two things. It's joy and curiosity. And I actually think that a lot of my nonfiction has to do with joy and curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. I love the again, going back, I'm just thinking of the heart. It's a muscle, but there's also this electricity that pumps through it. And I actually had the experience of watching an ultrasound, I guess that's the machine of a heart pumping, and seeing the different, this is this chamber, and this is the thing that opens up, my scientific talk, this is the thing that opens, the valve that opens up, that lets the blood go from here. You knew I'd get it. I appreciate you letting me get there by myself. And it's just, oh boy, it is just a really fascinating organ.
Yes. And it starts beating before we're born, right? And it keeps beating, basically every minute of every hour of every day, right? And I think that is just amazing. I think there's a lot of language we use about hearts that is true about the physical heart, right? A loyal heart, a true heart, a loving heart. I mean, all these things are true about our actual organ, right? It just keeps working. And so that whole phrase, the hardest working muscle, is in this book because it is. And I joke at one point, oh heart, you toil away while other organs get to rest. Even the brain gets to sleep. It's like, yeah, it just keeps doing its thing. And I find so much about the heart just absolutely fascinating. That you mentioned the electricity, how it has its own pacemaker. It has a couple of areas that are kind of specialized centers that, determine the heartbeat. It has an entire electrical system that makes the heart squeeze in the right way at the right time. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things that I love about my heart is that I know when I go to the gym and I have that workout and I get that heart pumping up at a certain level, it makes me feel really good. And I was reminded of that because yesterday was the first I was able to get to the gym and actually have my first real cardio workout since I got hurt 4 or 5 months ago. And it was and the buzz, I was going to use the word, but the buzz, the joy that you feel. I mean, it lasted for hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's great. I think that's the great part. One of the really nice parts about taking care of yourself and taking care of your heart is that a lot of the things that you do, including exercise and rest to take care of your heart, make you feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm fascinated when I meet doctors and I have a chance to speak to doctors, and oftentimes, now that I'm almost 100, I feel more comfortable asking my doctors questions and kind of demanding more of them.
Almost 100. I love that.
And I know I was having a procedure that most people choose to be asleep during, and I decided I wanted to watch it on the big screen, and I really did. It was a blast, and the doctor was showing me all the different parts of my body he was exploring with his camera. And at one point he said, "Do you want to see something really cool?" And I'm like, "Cooler than what I'm already looking at?" Yeah. And he kind of took the camera down in a different part of my body, and it's like, I look at this and I'm fascinated. And this isn't a guy right out of medical. This is a guy who's getting ready to retire in a couple of years, and he is still fascinated by the human body, this thing that he works with and sees every single day. I'm getting a sense that that's the same way that you feel. What is it about the body that is so fascinating for you, things that we take for granted?
I think, okay, so, medical school for me was the demarcation line between being a regular person and being a doctor, right? And you kind of like, you're a regular person. You're like, yeah, whatever. I do stuff. I don't really think too much about it, right? Then you go to medical school, and the first part you learn about is how everything works normally, which is awesome. But then you spend a lot of time thinking about all the things that can go wrong. Diseases and illnesses and injuries. that can really affect people. And then you try and learn about how to fix them, right? So I loved learning about the normal functioning of all the parts of the body, right? But it wasn't until after I learned about all the ways things can go wrong, and then, worked in the hospitals and saw people who were ill, and recovering, and realized how devastating some of these things could be, that I had even more of an appreciation for how beautiful things are when they're working the way they should, and we don't have to think about them. When I was in medical school and we were first kind of doing, listening to people's hearts, it was all, we listened to each other's hearts. Mm-hmm. Okay. And pretty much everyone had a normal heart. I was like, I am never going to hear anything abnormal. I'm never going to understand what it's like when they describe all these noises. And then you go one day in the hospital and you're like, oh my goodness. Okay. Now I understand what they're talking about, right? All these other extra noises, sounds, things that shouldn't be there, things that aren't there when they should be, all that kind of stuff. And, you grow to have a great appreciation for when things are working normally, when people are just out there living their lives and they're not having to think about, their physical selves as much. So I think that's what it is that when you learn a lot about all the things that can go wrong, you really appreciate it when things are right. And, even when things go wrong, even when people have injuries or problems or, illnesses, the ability of our own bodies to recover is remarkable. And all that we do in medicine is try to help our bodies do what they normally do, right? We try and make it easier. We try and use medications or whatever, to help our bodies heal the way that they can. And I just find that incredible. So I love being a doctor, in case you can't tell. I love, helping people stay healthy. I love helping people get better when they're sick. But anything that I do is really small compared to what our bodies do on their own.
That's beautiful. And I'm guessing that there are families out there that are going to be curled up together reading Your One and Only Heart. And there are parents out there that are going to be reading this book to a future doctor. And that's really exciting.
So.
Yeah.
I hope so. I think that everyone should be able to celebrate all the fantastic aspects of our biology, no matter who they are. But wow, if I got a kid interested in medicine, what a joy that would be. It was a book that got me interested in medicine. So I feel like it would have come full circle.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, where can we go to find out more about all the great books that you've created and will be creating? Because I know that you have a very full plate. You're a very, very busy doctor.
Thank you. The best place would be my website. It's www.rajanilarocca.com, RajaniLarocca.com.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited. We've been talking to the author of Your One and Only Heart, Dr. Rajani LaRocca. Rajani, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much, Jed. I love talking to you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode. If you want to make sure you don't miss a second of the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitch Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com and download your copy of the Reading With Your Kids online magazine. It's free. It's available at readingwithyourkids.com. Just click on our blog. Before we go, I want to make sure that I give a big thank you to my team: Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Madison Dairies, Soji Franklin, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary. I want to give a big thank you to my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, and most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.